I didn't check my credit card that often. I had alerts set up, and most of my purchases were routine groceries bills, the occasional overpriced coffee when work ran late. But that Monday morning, as I stood in my kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil, I opened the app out of habit. There it was. 4 transactions, all posted over the weekend. 4 Seasons Maui, $6,380 Hawaiian Airlines, $3,920 Island Helicopter Tours, $2, $100 Luxury Luau Experience, $2, $840, total $15,240, 72. For a second, I thought I had been hacked. The numbers didn't feel real, like Monopoly money. My hands hovered above the counter, the kettle still whistling behind me. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. She didn't start with a hello, just her usual cheerful urgency. Rach, isn't it exciting? Chloe's graduation trip is finally happening. Can you believe it? Hawaii? She's been dreaming of it for years. I didn't speak. Oh, and thank you for letting us use your card. We'll pay you back soon. We just needed the miles for the upgrades. You've got such a good credit score. That was the moment. Not the charges, not even the dollar amount. It was the way she said it. Light, like asking to borrow an umbrella. She didn't ask. She never had to. I was the daughter who didn't say no. I cleared my throat. You used my card without asking. A pause. Just enough to know she wasn't expecting the question. Rachel, don't be dramatic. We raised you. You've been blessed, and Chloe, well, she deserves something special after working so hard. That's the thing. My mother always wrapped entitlement in silk. She never screamed. She never called names. Just used that warm, reasonable tone that made you feel ashamed for questioning her. And I'd spent most of my life mistaking that for love. The kettle clicked off. I stared at the 4 digits glowing on my phone screen, wondering how many times I'd let things slide before this. How many small betrayals I'd folded into politeness. How many times I'd smiled through being erased. And somewhere between the island helicopter tour and the luau, I realized something. This wasn't about money. It was about what I'd been taught to accept. And maybe for once, I wasn't going to. It wasn't the first time something had been taken without asking. It started small. Or maybe I just told myself it was small. When I was 13, I got accepted into a summer program for gifted students, math of all things. I was quiet bookish, and my teachers thought I could use the challenge. I remember printing out the acceptance letter and placing it on the kitchen counter like it was a trophy. No one said anything. That same week, Chloe made the dance team at her middle school. There were cupcakes, balloons. My mother cried tears of joy. I clapped. I smiled. I stayed out of the pictures. I learned early that Chloe's wins were family wins. Mine were quiet things, private things, best kept to myself. I told myself it wasn't favoritism, that Chloe was just younger, softer, more in need of celebration. I had always been the easy one, self-motivated, low maintenance. That was the phrase my dad used once, low maintenance, like a dependable car that never broke down. And dependable things, people don't throw parties for them. By 17, I was working 2 part-time jobs to save for college. My parents said they'd help if they could, but Chloe's ballet academy was expensive and, well, she had potential. They said it with a kind of reverence, like she was on the verge of something spectacular, if only we all chipped in. I let them reallocate my college fund. I said it was fine. I meant it when I said it. And maybe that was the real betrayal, how easily I'd let it happen. Chloe was always sweet to me. That's the part no one understands. She wasn't cruel. She didn't gloat. She just expected things. She had grown up in a world where things showed up for her like magic. Clothes in her size, a new iPhone when hers cracked, someone else's credit card booking the spring break hotel. She was the kind of girl life handed umbrellas to before the storm even started. And I carried my own rain. By the time I graduated college debt-free, thanks to scholarships and a side job at the library, I didn't even tell my parents about the ceremony. I knew they wouldn't come. Chloe had a regional dance competition that weekend. Years later, sitting in my apartment, a glass of lukewarm wine in hand, and $15,000 missing from my credit limit, I realized I had never actually confronted any of it. Not the erased college fund, not the birthdays where Chloe's name was on the cake, not the phone calls that always began with "can you help" and never ended with "thank you." I had been quiet for so long I'd mistaken the silence for peace. But now that silence had a balance due, and this time I wasn't paying. I called her that night, not because I wanted to fight, because I needed to understand. The line rang 4 times before she picked up her voice, already smiling. "Sweetheart, I was just telling your father we should send Chloe a spa voucher for after the trip. Her skin gets so sensitive in the sun." I skipped the small talk. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the credit card." A pause. I could almost hear her rearranging her voice into something softer, more maternal. "Rachel, honey, this again. You used it without asking me. Technically, we've had access to that card since your father's surgery. You said we could use it for emergencies. This wasn't an emergency. It was important." Her tone tightened. She wasn't angry, not yet. Just sharpening the knife. "Your sister graduated with honors. She's worked hard. This was her moment. And you thought it was okay to charge $15,000 to my name." She exhaled as if I were a stubborn child refusing medicine. "You always do this." "Do what? Turn everything into a transaction. Money, money, money. That's all you ever think about." That landed like a slap. Me, the one who gave up her college fund. One who paid for her own education, her own car, her own everything. The one who never asked for anything back. "You didn't even tell me I said quieter now. You didn't think I deserved to know, because I knew you'd make it a problem. Rachel, you've always had this edge, always so cold, so withholding." I didn't want to ruin the moment. There it was. I ruined things. That was the role I played. I sat down, the phone warm against my cheek. "You said you'd pay me back." "Of course we will," she said quickly. "But not right this second. You know your father's pension doesn't stretch like it used to. And you, well, you're doing so well. You've got your little job in that apartment of yours. No husband, no kids, no real expenses. No real expenses. As if my life didn't count unless I had someone else depending on me." I felt something crack in my throat. I swallowed it. "You think that means you can take from me? I think it means you should be happy for your sister." There it was again. The reframing, the rewrite, the guilt gift-wrapped. "She's always been so generous with you. You know," she continued, "when you missed her birthday last year, she told everyone it was because you were working so hard. She defended you. I didn't even know I was invited." "Well, that's your problem, Rachel. You always expect people to chase you. You isolate. You pull away. And when we try to include you, yes, maybe in ways that aren't perfect, you lash out." It was so smooth, so practiced. I almost believed her. Almost. But I was tired of swallowing blame just because it was served in a sweet voice. "I'm going to the bank tomorrow," I said flatly. "Rachel, I didn't authorize those charges, and I'm not carrying them. Sweetheart. Good night, Mom." I hung up, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after someone slams a door and you finally hear how heavy it really was. The next morning, I called the bank. I had rehearsed the script in my head, calm, factual, reasonable. A professional woman disputing unauthorized charges. I imagined the voice on the other end saying things like, "We'll get right on that," or "We understand completely." Instead, I got put on hold, then transferred. Then told gently but firmly that because my parents had been listed as emergency users on the account years ago, technically it wasn't considered fraud. "You granted them access," the woman said. "Even if it was for a limited purpose, we can't prove misuse without written restrictions." She sounded sorry, but that kind of sorry didn't fix anything. I thanked her anyway. That's what I do. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. There's a certain kind of quiet that settles when you realize no one is coming to fix this. Not the bank, not the law, not your family. Just you. Alone. I opened my laptop, typed unauthorized family credit card use. The first few results were legal blogs. The rest were Reddit threads, stories from people like me, people who said yes once and watched it turn into a lifetime of obligation, people who lent and then were told it was a gift, people who were always expected to say yes and punished the moment they didn't. The same day, Chloe posted a photo on Instagram, her in a floral sundress on a beach holding a coconut drink and beaming under the caption, "Dreams do come true." She didn't tag me. Of course not, but I knew the smile. That easy, effortless smile that came from never having to think about where the money came from. I stared at it for a long time, not because I was angry, because I couldn't remember the last time I looked that happy. A few hours later, I got a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, everything okay with you and your mom? Heard there was drama." I didn't reply. Then came a message from my Aunt Linda, said you're upset about the trip, that you felt excluded. "It's sad. You've always been so distant." There it was again. That word. Distant. Not hurt, not disrespected, just distant. Cold. Hard to love. Funny how people always interpret boundaries as walls you built out of malice, never out of self-preservation. I scrolled back to Chloe's post. Hundreds of likes. Comments from family friends, people from church. "You deserve it, girl. Your parents are amazing. So proud of you." I imagined what they'd say if I told them the truth. That she didn't pay for a single thing. That I was the one who funded the coconut drink, the beachfront suite, the rainbow lei around her neck. But I already knew the answer. They'd say I was bitter, jealous, ungrateful. Because in families like mine, silence is the currency of peace. And speaking up, that makes you the problem. So I closed the app and opened a blank document. I didn't plan to post anything. I wasn't the type. I'd always hated oversharing. Watching other people put their pain out for the world to dissect like it was entertainment made me uncomfortable. I told myself I was better than that, more private, more composed. But it wasn't about me anymore. It was about how quickly the truth disappeared the moment someone told a prettier story. By Friday, I had received 6 texts from extended family, a voicemail from a former babysitter I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Even my old piano teacher reached out on Facebook commenting under a picture I hadn't updated in years. "Hope you're not taking things too personally. Your mom always means well." That was the final nudge, not the theft. Not the silence. Not even Chloe's new reel dancing barefoot on the beach with ukulele music in the background. It was the condescension, the way everyone assumed I was the one overreacting, as if generosity had been offered and I'd thrown it back. So I wrote. Not for revenge, not even to be understood. I wrote because I was tired of pretending it hadn't happened. It took me 3 hours. Not because the story was hard to tell, but because I had to decide which parts to include and which parts to let go. I kept it short. No accusations, just the facts. A few weeks ago, my parents used my credit card to fund a $15,000 graduation trip to Hawaii for my younger sister. They did not ask me. They did not inform me. When I confronted them, I was told I was being selfish and dramatic. I was also told that because I am single, child-free, and financially stable, my resources should be considered communal. I included the screenshots, the charges, a portion of the voicemail from my mom. I ended it with a line I hadn't planned but didn't delete. Silence keeps families functioning. It also keeps injustice invisible. I hit post. Then I turned off my phone and took a walk. It was a gray afternoon, the kind of sky that looked like it had forgotten how to rain. I walked past couples pushing strollers, dogs pulling their owners toward invisible smells, teenagers clicking past on skateboards. No one looked at me. No one knew that somewhere online, a quiet woman had just stopped being quiet. When I got home, the notifications had started. Some supportive, some accusatory. Some from strangers who saw their own stories in mine and wrote messages that began with, "I thought I was the only one." But the one that made me pause came from my Aunt Naomi, my mother's younger sister. The kind of woman who wore oversized jewelry and said whatever she wanted, but never without purpose. Her message was short. "You're brave, and not wrong. She did this to me once too. Call me when you can." We hadn't spoken in years. Last I'd heard, they'd had a falling out over money. I had never asked the details, just assumed it was a misunderstanding. Now I knew better. We spoke that night. She didn't bother with small talk, just dove in. She borrowed 10 grand from me back in 2009, said it was for your dad's back surgery. I found out later she used it to redecorate Chloe's room. When I asked for it back, she said I was obsessed with money and told the family I was unstable. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened. And when we hung up, I called the bank again this time, not as a confused daughter, but as someone armed with context documentation and legal advice. They reopened the case. The investigation took 10 days. By the end of it, the charges were reversed. I received a formal apology from the bank, a letter explaining their revised stance, and a warning that any future shared access on that account would be permanently disabled. The money was back. The trust was not. At dinner that weekend, I ate alone. A quiet meal in my small apartment with the window cracked open and the smell of someone else's takeout drifting in. I poured a glass of wine, not to celebrate, but to acknowledge something simple. It was over. Not the pain, not the history, but the part of me that had always waited for them to make it right. That part had been returned to sender. They didn't call right away. Not after the post. Not after the charges were reversed. Not when Chloe's trip was cut short because the card had been flagged and the hotel demanded a different payment method. But 2 weeks later, my phone rang on a Sunday morning. Unknown number. California area code. I didn't answer. A voicemail followed. It was my mother. Her voice was measured. Flat, almost. We're concerned. This isn't how family handles things. You've embarrassed us. You've humiliated your sister. You've turned private matters into public drama. I hope you're proud of yourself. There was no apology. Only shame. Not theirs, mine. Chloe texted later that day. I didn't know they used your card. I swear. I thought it was part of the gift. I wouldn't have gone if I knew. Then a second message. But you didn't have to post it like that. You made everything so ugly. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity. The kind that comes after months of clouded vision. After years of trying to earn a kind of love that only existed when I was useful. I didn't respond. Not to Chloe. Not to my mother. Not to anyone who only called when the image cracked. A few days later, I walked past a store window and caught my reflection, just for a second, just long enough to recognize the woman standing there. She looked calm, not triumphant, not broken, just real. For years, I had accepted a version of myself told through other people's voices. Too cold, too distant, too ungrateful, too much. But the silence I had kept wasn't peace. It was permission, and I wasn't giving it anymore. So I did the quiet thing, the irreversible thing. I changed my number. I closed the shared bank accounts. I removed them from my emergency contacts. I booked a weekend trip alone to a cabin in the mountains with no cell signal and too many stars overhead. And when I came back, I didn't check for messages. There were some, I'm sure. Voicemails I'll never listen to. Stories I'll never get to correct. That's the price of letting go. But I've made peace with it. Because sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying. It's stepping away so the version of you they invented can finally die. And the version that survived, she gets to live. Not loudly, not to prove a point, but fully, quietly, and without permission. I didn't disappear. They just stopped seeing me. And now that I've stopped waiting, I finally see myself.
Hi, I'm Olivia Carter. I'm 25, fresh out of college with an art degree, and sitting on a trust fund that could make most people's heads spin. But here's the twist. I've got big dreams of making it as an artist on my own terms. No handouts, no shortcuts. Just me, my brushes, and a whole lot of determination. Life was looking pretty sweet when I moved in with my fiancé, Mark, into this fancy suburban neighborhood where every house looked straight out of a magazine. One day, Mark was practically bouncing with excitement. "Babe, you've got to meet my mom," he said, grinning. "She's dying to get to know you better." I had no idea that meeting would be the start of something I couldn't have seen coming. Enter Evelyn, my future mother-in-law. Imagine the perfect suburban mom, but with eyes that could slice through steel. She greeted me with open arms and a smile that didn't quite meet those razor-sharp eyes. "Olivia, darling," she said, air kissing my cheeks. Mark has told me so much about you. We simply must have lunch and get to know each other better. I nodded, though I couldn't shake the feeling that she was sizing me up. Sounds great, Mrs. Thompson. Oh, please, she laughed. Call me Evelyn. We're practically family now. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn was everywhere, dropping by unannounced, calling at all hours, always with that same plastic smile and endless questions. So, Olivia, she'd say sweetly, Mark mentioned you have quite the nest egg tucked away. How fortunate. I'd brush it off with a laugh. Oh, just something for art school. But Evelyn wouldn't let it go. One day, during lunch at an overpriced cafe, she leaned in close. You know, dear, in his family, we believe in sharing our blessings. Have you ever thought about how your fund could benefit us all? I nearly choked on my avocado toast. I'm sorry, what? She patted my hand, all motherly. Oh, I'm just thinking out loud. But with Mark's business ventures and my charity work, we could really make that money work for us. Alarm bells went off in my head, but I pushed them aside. This was Mark's mom. Surely she couldn't be serious. Things came to a head one night when Mark dropped a bombshell. Babe, I've been thinking, he began. Why don't we open a joint account? You know, pool our resources. I froze. Why? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shrugged, looking too casual. Just seems like the smart thing to do. We're getting married, after all. A knot tightened in my stomach. Mark, you know my trust fund is for art school. He gave me a pleading look. Don't you trust me? There it was, the guilt trip. With a sigh, I gave in. Fine, but just for household stuff. Okay. He grinned, pulling me into a hug. You're the best. I love you. But as I hugged him, a sinking feeling settled in my chest. I couldn't shake the sense that I had just made a huge mistake. I should have known something was wrong when I couldn't access our joint account online. Panicked, I went to the bank. I'm sorry, Miss Carter, the teller said. There seems to be an issue with your account. My heart dropped. What kind of issue? She hesitated. There have been several large withdrawals recently. Your balance is significantly lower than it should be. How much lower? I asked, barely able to speak. When she showed me the number, I felt sick. Almost everything was gone. I rushed home to find Mark slumped on the couch, looking miserable. Where's the money, Mark? He flinched. Liv, I can explain. Explain what? How you drained our account without telling me. He ran his hands through his hair, looking desperate. I messed up, okay. I got in too deep, the casinos, the cards. I thought I could win it back. Casinos? Cards? What are you talking about? That's when it all came out, his hidden gambling addiction, the massive debts to dangerous people. They're going to hurt me, Liv, he begged. I need help. We need to use your trust fund. I stared at him, horrified. Are you out of your mind? That's my future you're talking about. Before he could respond, the front door flew open and Evelyn swept in like a storm. Oh good, you're both here, she said, completely unfazed. Now, Olivia dear, let's talk about accessing that trust fund of yours. I gaped at her. You knew about this? She waved it off, like it was nothing. Of course I knew. I always know what's best for this family. Now how quickly can we get that money transferred? I exploded. Are you kidding me? I'm not giving you a cent. This is insane. Evelyn's smile vanished, her eyes turning cold. Don't be difficult, dear. This is for Mark's safety, for the good of the family. I laughed bitterly. Family? Is that what you call this? Lying, stealing, manipulating. Without another word, I turned to leave. Evelyn's grip tightened on my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You ungrateful little brat. She spat through clenched teeth. After everything we've done for you. I yanked my arm free. Don't touch me, I snapped. I'm out of here. I turned toward the door, but before I could reach it, everything went black. When I came to, the air was cold and damp, my head pounding. Darkness surrounded me. As my eyes adjusted, I realized where I was, the basement, and the door was locked. Panic surged through me as I pounded on the door, shouting, "Let me out." From the other side, Evelyn's voice came, eerily calm. Olivia, this is for your own good. Take some time to think about your priorities. We'll let you out when you're ready to cooperate. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, locked in a basement by my future mother-in-law. It felt like some kind of twisted nightmare. Days blurred together. They brought food and water, always accompanied by Evelyn's false sweetness or Mark's desperate pleas. Mark would come down, his face pale and drawn. "Liv, you don't understand," he'd say, his voice trembling. "These guys, they are serious. They'll kill me if I don't pay them." But no matter how much he begged or threatened, I stood my ground. There was no way I was giving them my trust fund. By the third day, I was losing it, cabin fever setting in fast. Then I remembered my phone. Zoe, my best friend from college. Years ago, we'd come up with this ridiculous emergency code. I just had to hope she'd remember it. When Mark came down again, I played my part. "Water," I croaked weakly. "Please." He hesitated but then nodded, starting to turn away. "Can I at least have my phone? To play some music?" To my surprise, he agreed. The moment I had the phone in my hand, I sent Zoe a text. Just 3 emojis. A house, a basement, and an SOS. I prayed she'd understand. Hours passed. Then suddenly, a commotion erupted upstairs. Shouting, heavy footsteps. "Police, open up." The basement door flew open and light flooded in, blinding me. Strong arms lifted me as officers carried me up and out of the basement. As I stumbled into the sunlight, I caught sight of Evelyn and Mark, both handcuffed, being led to police cars. The shock on their faces would have been satisfying if I wasn't so overwhelmed. Everything after that was a blur. Paramedics checking me over. Police asking questions, my parents rushing to my side, tearful and shaken. "Oh, sweetie," my mom sobbed, hugging me tight. We were so worried. My dad's face was grim. "They won't get away with this, Olivia. I promise you that." At the hospital, a detective with kind eyes sat beside my bed. "Miss Carter, I know this is hard, but we need to understand what happened." I took a deep breath and told him everything. The manipulation, the joint account, their constant pressure for my trust fund. He listened carefully, then spoke softly. "I'm afraid this goes beyond just you. We've uncovered evidence of multiple victims." My heart sank. "Others? How many?" "More than a dozen so far. Young women, all with substantial assets. You're the first to escape." The weight of it crashed down on me. I wasn't alone, but that didn't bring much comfort. Weeks passed in a blur of statements, meetings with lawyers, and therapy sessions as I tried to piece my life back together. Trust, once shattered, felt impossible to rebuild. One afternoon, sitting in my therapist's office, I finally broke down. How could I have been so stupid? I sobbed. Dr. Ramirez leaned forward, her voice gentle but steady. "Olivia, you're not stupid. You were the victim of skilled manipulators, but you're also a survivor." "I want to fight back," I told my lawyer one day. "Not just for me, but for everyone they hurt." He nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. "We'll hit them where it hurts, through their assets, and we'll make sure they never do this to anyone else." As I left his office, a plan began to form in my mind. I caught a glimpse of myself in a window, and for the first time in months I saw a spark of the old Olivia. "You messed with the wrong artist," I muttered, a grim smile spreading across my face. The Thompsons thought they could back me into a corner, but they had no idea I was about to create my masterpiece, and I was calling it justice. Turns out, Evelyn's so-called charity work was as charitable as a loan shark in a soup kitchen. With the help of a badass financial investigator named Sam, we uncovered a web of fraud so intricate it made my head spin. "Look at this," Sam said one day, pointing at her computer screen. "Evelyn's been cooking the books for years. Fake donations, inflated expenses, the works." I leaned in, my artist's eye catching the patterns in the numbers. "It's like a twisted masterpiece of greed." Sam nodded grimly. "And we're going to dismantle it, piece by piece." One afternoon, while grabbing coffee, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Local businessman arrested in connection with organized crime ring. There he was, my ex-fiancé, being led away in handcuffs. I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was a hollow ache. Guess those business ventures weren't so legit after all. Huh, Mark. I muttered to my phone. But the real fireworks came when Evelyn's empire began to crumble. It was like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. First, her friends started distancing themselves. Then came the whispers and the pointed looks. "Did you hear about Evelyn Thompson?" I overheard someone saying at my favorite coffee shop. "They say she's been stealing from her own charities." I sipped my latte, hiding a smirk. If only they knew. As satisfying as it was to see the Thompsons face justice, I knew I had to do more. Their victims, people like me, needed help. That's how the Phoenix Foundation was born. At our first support group meeting, I looked around the room, seeing the pain and determination in each face. "We're not victims anymore," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "We're survivors, and together we'll make sure no one else goes through what we did." The months flew by. Between managing the foundation and diving back into my art, I barely had time to breathe. But for the first time in ages, I felt free. Art school was everything I dreamed of and more. My painful experiences fueled my creativity in ways I never expected. My first gallery showing featured a series called Broken Trusts, abstract pieces that spoke of betrayal and resilience. "This is powerful stuff, Olivia," my professor said, studying an intense piece. "You've really found your voice." I nodded, thinking of how far I'd come. Sometimes you have to go through the fire to forge something beautiful. It was a lazy Sunday morning when I saw it. Curled up on my couch, scrolling through the news on my tablet, a headline caught my eye. "Thompson family empire collapses, matriarch faces decades in prison." I read the article, emotions swirling in my chest. Evelyn had been sentenced to 20 years for fraud and embezzlement, and Mark was looking at 10 years for his connections to organized crime. Their assets were seized, their reputation in ruins. Part of me wanted to celebrate, to call up Zoe and pop champagne. But as I looked around my sunlit apartment at the half-finished canvas in a corner and the pile of thank you notes from Phoenix Foundation members, I realized something. I didn't need their downfall to validate my success. I had risen above their betrayal, created something meaningful, and found real, genuine connections. That was the sweetest revenge of all. Setting down my tablet, I picked up my paintbrush. A new piece was forming in my mind, not of broken trust or betrayal, but of hope and new beginnings. And that's the end of Olivia's journey, from betrayal to triumph. Now I have a question for you. If you were in Olivia's shoes, would you have pursued legal justice against your abusers or walked away to focus solely on your own healing? There's no right answer, but your choice says a lot about how you view forgiveness, justice, and personal growth. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I never planned to expose Barbara Wilson's carefully constructed lie at her own anniversary party. But sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of timing. The crystal chandeliers in her ballroom cast elegant shadows across the faces of Hartford's elite as they celebrated my mother-in-law's 30 years of building her real estate empire from nothing. If only they knew. "Amanda, darling, you're hovering by the appetizers again." Barbara's voice cut through the ambient chatter, dripping with fake concern. "Those canapes are for the guests, dear. Besides," she patted my stomach with perfectly manicured fingers, "that assistant salary of yours can't afford extra trips to the tailor." I forced a smile, remembering my promise to David that I wouldn't ruin his parents' anniversary celebration. My husband of 2 years still didn't understand why his mother treated me like something stuck to the bottom of her Louboutins. But I knew. Barbara Wilson had spent 3 decades crafting her image as Hartford's self-made real estate queen, and having a daughter-in-law who actually worked in corporate finance threatened her narrative. "I brought some business cards," I said quietly, reaching into my clutch. "I actually got promoted last month to senior financial analyst." Barbara's face twisted into something ugly before smoothing back into her hostess mask. In one fluid motion, she snatched the cards from my hand and tore them into tiny pieces, letting them flutter to the marble floor like expensive confetti. "Oh dear, how clumsy of me," she trilled, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. "But really, Amanda, this is hardly the place to network. We're celebrating real success tonight, not your little office job." I watched my name scatter across the floor, each piece a reminder of every slight, every dismissive comment, every time Barbara had made sure I knew I wasn't good enough for her precious son, or her precious family name. "Mother." David appeared beside me, finally noticing the commotion. "What are you doing?" "Teaching your wife about appropriate party etiquette." Barbara smiled, touching her signature pearl necklace. The one she never failed to mention was worth more than my yearly salary. "Someone has to." I felt David tense beside me, caught once again between his wife and the mother who'd controlled him with guilt and family obligation his entire life. Before he could speak, Barbara's voice rang out across the ballroom. "Everyone, gather round. It's time for my anniversary speech." She glided to the center of the room, commanding attention like she'd done for 30 years. When I started Wilson Real Estate, I had nothing but determination and vision. I tuned out the familiar story, how she'd built her company from scratch, how she'd never taken handouts, how she earned every property in her portfolio through grit and genius. I'd heard it all before, but tonight was different. Tonight, the weight of the truth sat heavy in my designer clutch, wrapped in a thick manila envelope. Thanks to my success, Barbara continued, I've provided generously for my family. Well, most of my family. Her eyes found me in the crowd. Some people prefer to struggle independently rather than accept help from their betters. Isn't that right, Amanda? The crowd tittered politely. David's hand found mine, squeezing in silent apology. But I was done apologizing, done hiding, done protecting Barbara Wilson's carefully constructed house of cards. Actually, Barbara, my voice carried clearly across the sudden silence, I've been meaning to discuss business with you. Amanda? David whispered, maybe not now. But I was already walking forward, manila envelope in hand. Barbara's eyes narrowed at my approach, her perfect smile never wavering. This is hardly the time for your little office matters, she dismissed, turning back to her audience. Oh, but it is. I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately. You see, I've been trying to tell you for months. About my work, about my recent acquisition of certain assets. Barbara's smile froze as I pulled out the first document. I'm not just a senior financial analyst, Barbara. I'm the CEO of Phoenix Capital Partners. We specialize in real estate investment and acquisition. The crowd murmured. Barbara's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. And 6 months ago, I continued, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. Phoenix acquired controlling interest in Wilson Real Estate's mortgage holdings. All of them. The champagne glass slipped from Barbara's fingers, shattering on the marble floor in perfect synchronization with her carefully constructed facade. Her face drained of color as I held up the mortgage documents bearing my signature, not as David's wife or Barbara's daughter-in-law, but as the owner of the company that now controlled every property in her portfolio. So you see, Barbara, I said softly, watching 30 years of lies crumble in her eyes, we should probably discuss appropriate business etiquette. After all, you work for me now. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. David stood frozen, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. And Barbara? Barbara Wilson, the queen of Hartford real estate, the woman who had spent 2 years treating me like dirt beneath her feet, finally saw me clearly. But this wasn't just about revenge. The documents in my hands held more secrets than just property deeds, secrets that would make this anniversary party one the Wilson family would never forget. The silence in Barbara's pristine office felt heavier than the thick stack of documents I'd placed on her mahogany desk. It had been 3 days since the anniversary party, 3 days of unanswered calls from David and endless speculation in Hartford's social circles. This is impossible, Barbara muttered, flipping through the papers with trembling hands. Her perfect French manicure, usually so immaculate, was chipped at the edges. These properties, the mortgages, they were all paid off years ago. I leaned back in the leather chair across from her desk, her throne, as the family called it. Were they, Barbara, or is that just another story you've been telling? She looked up sharply, the familiar hatred in her eyes now tinged with fear. You conniving little. Careful. I cut her off. That's no way to talk to your new employer. The door opened and David walked in. He looked exhausted, his usually crisp suit wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. Knowing him, he probably had. Mom, he said quietly, I've been reviewing the company books like Amanda suggested. He placed another folder on the desk. Would you like to explain why there are 2 sets of accounting records? Barbara's face went from pale to ashen. Davy, darling, those are just tax fraud, I finished for her. Systematic and deliberate tax fraud spanning the last 15 years. Along with some very creative accounting to hide the fact that Wilson Real Estate has been operating in the red for the past decade. You're lying. Barbara stood up so quickly her chair crashed against the wall. I built this company from nothing. Every property, every deal was mortgaged to the hilt to maintain the illusion of success. I said calmly, you've been robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking out new loans to cover old ones, all while playing the role of Hartford's real estate queen. David sank into the chair beside me, loosening his tie. Why, Mom? We had a good business. A legitimate one. Why risk everything? Barbara's perfectly painted lips trembled. You don't understand. After your father died, the other developers thought they could push me out. A widow playing at business? They laughed at me. I had to show them, had to prove that you were better than everyone else. I finished, even if it meant breaking the law, even if it meant treating your own family like pawns. Family? She laughed bitterly. You're not family. You're just some middle-class nobody who seduced my son. I'm the nobody who owns your mortgages, I corrected. The nobody who could call in your loans tomorrow and watch your empire crumble. The nobody who has enough evidence of your fraud to send you to prison. David reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. Amanda's trying to help, Mom. Phoenix Capital Partners can restructure the debt, keep the company solvent. But there have to be changes. Barbara sank back into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 60 years. Changes? I pulled out another document, my final card. Full disclosure of all financial irregularities. A new board of directors. And your immediate resignation. You want my company? Her voice cracked. Everything I've built? No, Barbara. I want you to face reality. Your company is dying. Your reputation is built on lies. And your son. I glanced at David, seeing the pain in his eyes. Your son deserves better than being trapped in this web of deception. Davy, she pleaded, reaching for him across the desk. You can't let her do this. We're family. David stood slowly, straightening his spine. Yes, Mom, we are family, which is why we're offering you a chance to fix this, legally, quietly, without scandal or charges. Under my management, I added, with David as COO. We'll preserve the Wilson name, save the company, and keep you out of prison. All you have to do is step down. Barbara's hands went to her pearl necklace, her armor, her symbol of success. For a long moment, she stared out the window at the Hartford skyline she claimed to conquer. If I refuse? Her voice was barely a whisper. I stood gathering the documents. Then tomorrow morning, these records go to the FBI, the IRS, and the Connecticut Real Estate Commission. Your choice. As I turned to leave, Barbara's voice stopped me. You planned this, didn't you? All of it? The job at Phoenix, marrying my son. I looked back at her, seeing not the fearsome mother-in-law who tormented me, but a desperate woman who'd lost herself in her own lies. No, Barbara. I fell in love with David despite you, not because of you. Finding out about your fraud was just karmic justice. Amanda, David called softly. Give us a minute. I nodded, leaving mother and son alone to face the ruins of their family legacy. Through the door, I heard Barbara begin to sob, real tears this time, not the theatrical ones she used for manipulation. Standing in the elegant hallway of Wilson Real Estate, surrounded by photos of Barbara's success story, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep sadness for the family that had been twisted by lies and hope that maybe, just maybe, truth could set them free. But as I waited for David, my phone buzzed with a text that made my blood run cold. Barbara's web of deception ran deeper than even I had discovered, and tomorrow would bring revelations that would shake Hartford society to its core. The text message glowed ominously on my phone screen. Miss Carter, we found something in the offshore accounts. Mrs. Wilson wasn't just defrauding the government. She was laundering money for the Hartman family. My hands went cold. The Hartmans were Hartford's oldest criminal dynasty, masquerading as legitimate business owners. If Barbara had gotten involved with them. The office door opened and David emerged, looking drained. She's agreed to step down. Mom's signing the papers now. Before I could respond, the elevator doors pinged open. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, their FBI badges glinting under the hallway lights. Mrs. Wilson, one called out. We need to speak with you immediately. Barbara appeared in the doorway, her face still streaked with tears. When she saw the agents, all color drained from her face. No, she whispered. They promised they wouldn't. Mom? David's voice sharpened. What's going on? The next hour passed in a blur of revelations. The FBI had been investigating the Hartman family's money laundering operation for years. Barbara, desperate to maintain her illusion of success, had agreed to help them clean their money through real estate transactions. In return, they'd helped her keep her financial house of cards standing. I had no choice, Barbara kept saying as the agents led her away. After the market crash in '08, I was going to lose everything. The Hartmans offered a solution. David stood at the window, watching his mother being escorted to a waiting car. "Did you know about this?" he asked quietly. "I just found out," I answered truthfully. "The money laundering wasn't in any of our records. The FBI investigation was completely separate." He turned to me, his eyes full of pain, and something else. Understanding. "All those times she belittled you, treated you like you were beneath us. She was terrified you'd discover the truth." "David." I touched his arm gently. "We can still save the legitimate parts of the business. Your father's original properties, the honest investments." My father, he laughed bitterly. "He probably knew. That's why he drank himself to death 5 years ago. He couldn't live with the shame." The next few weeks transformed Wilson Real Estate. Under Phoenix Capital's management, we untangled the web of illegal transactions, cooperated with federal investigators, and began rebuilding the company's reputation. David proved himself an exceptional COO. His integrity and business acumen helped restore client confidence. Barbara took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against the Hartmans in exchange for a reduced sentence. The day before she reported to prison, she asked to see me. "I underestimated you," she said, sitting in the prison's visiting room. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple slacks and a sweater. Even her precious pearls were gone. "I thought you were a threat to my status, my reputation. I never imagined you'd be our salvation." "I didn't do it for you, Barbara." "I know," she smiled sadly. "You did it for David. You love him in a way I never understood, without conditions, without needing to control him." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "My grandmother's pearls. The real ones, not the fakes I've been wearing to keep up appearances. Give them to your daughter someday when you have one. Tell her," her voice cracked, "tell her to be better than me." 6 months later, David and I stood in the renovated Wilson Real Estate offices, now Carter Wilson Properties. The old photos of Barbara's success story had been replaced with images of genuine achievements, community development projects, affordable housing initiatives, and legitimate business partnerships. "Look what came today," David said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Barbara, written from prison. She'd been teaching financial literacy to other inmates, helping them understand how to manage money legally and ethically. "People can change," I said softly, remembering the broken woman in the prison visiting room. David wrapped his arms around me, his hand resting on my slightly swollen belly, "Our secret for just a few more weeks." "They can. You taught me that. You taught all of us that." As we stood there, watching the sunset over Hartford, I touched the pearl necklace resting in my desk drawer. Someday I would give it to our daughter, along with a different kind of legacy, one built on truth, integrity, and the courage to face reality, no matter how painful. Barbara Wilson's empire of lies had crumbled, but from its ashes, something genuine had grown. Sometimes I realized the greatest act of love isn't protecting family secrets, it's having the strength to expose them, face them, and heal from them. And as for those business cards Barbara had torn up at her party, I didn't need them anymore. My name was now on the building, a testament not to deception and fraud, but to the power of honesty and redemption. Hi, I'm Sarah. The living room felt alive, filled with warmth and laughter as Michael and I put the final touches on the decorations for Lily's adoption ceremony. The scent of her favorite lilies mingled with the soft sweetness of vanilla candles flickering on the mantelpiece. Michael adjusted the banner that proudly read, "Welcome home, Lily." His hands were steady, but his eyes shimmered with excitement every time they met mine. "Everything's perfect, Sarah. Can you believe she's finally going to be officially ours?" His voice cracked with emotion. I smiled, tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear. "I can't wait. After all we've been through, this feels like a dream." The journey hadn't been easy. Michael and I had spent years grappling with the heartbreak of infertility, each negative test a painful reminder of what we thought we couldn't have. But when we met Lily at the foster care center, with her bright eyes and shy smile, we knew she was meant to be our daughter. The adoption process had been long and exhausting, yet every step brought us closer to this moment. As guests started to arrive, the room filled with chatter and congratulatory smiles. My brother Ethan was one of the last to enter. His smile was tight, his eyes scanning the room with an unreadable expression. Despite his traditional views on family, which often caused tension at gatherings, I hoped today would be different. "Hey, Ethan. Glad you could make it," I greeted him, trying to keep things light. Yeah, wouldn't miss it, he replied, though his tone was reserved. You know, I always believed that family should be traditional. I met his gaze, my voice firm but calm. Family isn't just about blood, Ethan. It's about love. Lily is as much our daughter as if I'd given birth to her. His frown deepened, but he said nothing more. The ceremony began, and as Michael and I stood beside Lily, her small hand wrapped tightly around mine, I felt the weight of this beautiful moment. The officiant was halfway through a heartfelt speech about families and new beginnings when Ethan abruptly stood up. Lily's not a real family member. This is a lie. She's not one of us and never will be. Ethan, enough. Michael's voice was steady and firm as he stepped forward. Lily is our daughter, and your approval isn't needed. The room grew tense, guests shifting uncomfortably. Some murmured their support, while others seemed uncertain. Ethan, his confidence faltering, glanced around the room. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, he shot back, though his voice wavered. No, I said, stepping forward. You're saying what you think. Lily is our daughter, and if you can't accept that, maybe you should leave. Ethan stared at me, the fight draining from him as he saw the unity between Michael and me. Without another word, he turned and walked out, the door closing sharply behind him. The warmth that had briefly faded slowly returned as our friends and family rallied around us, their support a comforting blanket against the chill Ethan had left behind. Lily looked up at me, her smile so bright, so full of hope. In that moment, I knew we'd made the right choice. Not just for us, but for her. This was what family was truly about: love, commitment, and belonging, no matter the bloodlines. Michael squeezed my shoulder gently and then turned to the guests. Please give us a moment, he said, guiding them toward the refreshment table. Once the room had emptied out a bit, I stepped outside, finding Ethan leaning against the porch railing, staring out into the yard. Ethan, what happened in there? This was supposed to be a happy day, and you? I trailed off, my voice thick with hurt. He didn't look at me, his voice tight. You wouldn't understand, Sarah. You're changing everything our family stands for. That's not true. I'm expanding what our family can be. Why can't you see that Lily is as much a part of this family as any of us? Finally, he turned to face me, his eyes clouded with fear and frustration. It's not just about today, Sarah. It's about what comes after. Adopting. It opens doors we can't close. What about the family legacy? The lineage? I scoffed, the word bitter in my mouth. Legacy. Is our legacy more important than giving a loving home to a child who needs one? How can you be so selfish? Ethan's posture deflated as he rubbed his forehead, his voice quieter. It's not just selfishness. It's about preserving what we've known. You moving forward with this. It feels like you're leaving the rest of us behind, like our way of life isn't good enough. I softened, seeing the fear behind his words. Ethan, you're letting fear control you. You're hurting everyone around you, especially a little girl who just wants to be loved. How can that preserve anything good? He looked away, the conflict in his eyes now mingling with a deep sense of shame. In the weeks following the adoption ceremony, the ground shifted beneath all of us, but none more so than Ethan. His once rigid and structured life, built on his unwavering beliefs, began to crumble. Did you hear about Ethan? Michael murmured one evening, scrolling through his phone as we settled on the couch. Lily was dozing peacefully between us. A knot formed in my stomach. What now? I asked, bracing myself. He's been put on leave from work. Apparently, some of the board members heard about his outbursts at the ceremony. They're questioning his judgment, saying this isn't the first time he's let personal biases affect his professional decisions. The news didn't surprise me, but it still felt heavy. Ethan had always prided himself on his career. His identity was so deeply intertwined with his professional success that I knew this would cut him to the core. As Ethan's world seemed to shrink, ours expanded with a new and profound sense of belonging. The community's response to the adoption had been overwhelmingly supportive. Neighbors who had attended the ceremony expressed both their disdain for Ethan's behavior and admiration for our strength. Our friends and extended family rallied around us, organizing small gatherings, playdates, and outings for Lily. They made sure she felt the embrace of a community that saw her as one of their own. "Mommy, everyone is really nice here," Lily remarked one day, her voice full of innocent wonder as we watched her play in the park with her new friends. "They are, sweetheart, they really are," I replied, my heart swelling with warmth. Her simple observation touched me deeply. a reminder of just how far we had come. The contrast between our growing support system and Ethan's increasingly solitary struggle was stark. While his life seemed to fracture, ours flourished. It became clearer with each passing day that the open hearts around us had given us something far more valuable than tradition or bloodlines could ever offer. As we continued to build our lives around love, connection, and acceptance, it was evident that while Ethan had lost much, we had gained immeasurably more. Our community, our friends, and our family didn't just accept us. They celebrated us. And in that celebration, we found the truest meaning of family. Months had passed since Ethan's disruptive outburst, and the ripples from that day had finally settled into a calm, steady rhythm for us. But for Ethan, the consequences of his actions had only deepened. One crisp autumn evening, as Michael and I planned a small gathering to celebrate Lily's adoption anniversary, my phone rang. It was Ethan. His voice, once so confident, was now low and tinged with defeat. "Sarah, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I know I've made mistakes, huge ones. I'm sorry, truly. Can we meet? I want to make things right." I paused, the phone heavy in my hand. The old pain, dulled by time, still throbbed at his words. "Ethan, I appreciate your apology, but I can't put my family through more turmoil. We need to heal, and right now, that means doing it without you." A silence stretched between us. Finally, he sighed, his voice quiet. "I understand." We ended the call with a sense of finality, though the decision weighed on me as I watched Lily, so vibrant and completely at home in her life with us. I knew it was the right choice. Protecting this peace, this happiness we had built, was my priority. The day of our celebration was simple and joyful. Close friends and family gathered in our backyard, the golden leaves above us creating a warm canopy. Lily, dressed in a bright blue dress with ribbons in her hair, flitted from guest to guest, her laughter mingling with the soft music. Michael stood beside me, his hand warm on my back as we watched her. "This is what it's all about, isn't it?" he said softly. I nodded, my heart full. "It is. This is family, not defined by blood or birth, but by love and choice." As the party continued, I stepped aside for a moment, taking in the scene before me. This was our chosen family, diverse, beautiful, and strong. We had created a circle of love and support that was just as real and legitimate as any traditional family. In the quiet corners of my thoughts, I hoped Ethan would one day find his way to understanding and acceptance. But our paths had diverged. His journey was no longer intertwined with ours. I turned back to the celebration, to my husband, my daughter, and the friends who had stood by us through it all. In the laughter, the shared stories, the clinking of glasses, and the setting sun, I saw the true essence of family. It was resilience. It was forgiveness, not always of each other, but of the hardships we have faced and overcome. It was the forward motion of lives bound together by choice and by the simple, profound act of love. Ethan's absence was a poignant reminder of the cost of holding too tightly to unyielding beliefs. Alone and regretful, his path stood in stark contrast to the vibrant, inclusive circle we had drawn around ourselves. In this new beginning, there was no room for the narrowness of the past, only the wide, embracing love of our present and future. This was our family, legitimate, undeniable, and real. That brings us to the end of our story. Now, I have a question for all of you. Do you believe that family should be defined strictly by blood ties, or can chosen relationships provide the same sense of belonging and love? What are your thoughts on creating family bonds through choice rather than traditional lineage? Please share your opinions in the comments below.